Imagine a vibrant discussion between people that includes both openness and critical thought in the pursuit of truth. The Purchasing Truth podcast is an experience, a journey, an exploration of the impact that negative messages in politics and the media have on our families, community, society, and nation. Join your hosts, Bill Stierle and Tom Hazard, to discover new concepts and language strategies that will reveal effective ways of establishing truth. This podcast series will tackle current events, leadership challenges, healthcare confusion, integrity in business, and many other areas that affect us all. Gain clarity and understanding of the various truth perspectives. Welcome to Purchasing Truth.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Purchasing Truth. I'm Tom Hazard, along with your host, Bill Stierle. And you know, Bill, today I'm really pleased to talk about this subject, and this may surprise some of our regular listeners, because a lot of times we'll call out Fox News or a Hannity or a Tucker Carlson on something they're saying that's not in alignment with truth or not helpful. But today we're going to talk about CNN and how they're a part of the problem too.
Yeah, that's for sure. One of the things in communication, and as I support businesses and organizations to communicate better, one of the challenges is that, boy, if you put junky language into it, you're not necessarily going to get cooperation and collaboration from the listener. They're going to really literally reject and or boo when you're using a language strategy that isn't really helpful. And having the opportunity to say, wait a minute, you know, we've got to do a better job of communicating to make a difference, not to create a conflict. And that's one of the things that regrettably a paid news service who's looking for advertisement is looking forward to, is to create a conflict so they can get eyeballs, so that they can pay the bills, so they can stay in business. And then all of a sudden you're not getting the level of news that we would like to get, you know, and it's not reported that way. It's reported from a place of escalated energy just to get the number of eyeballs it needs. So that's one of the big problems that CNN and all the news outlets have, is that they've got to maintain some form of sensationalism in order to keep their eyeballs in place. And so regrettably, it's caused some really junky tactics to take place.
And to me, when I see some of these tactics in action, it's very disheartening to me, disappointing, I guess, also, because to me, it appears like, and I'm not going to paint the entire news organization with the same broad brush, but certain, I don't know if it's the producers telling the reporter to do this or the reporter deciding to do it on their own, but it appears like they're trying to manufacture news, you know, manufacture something that's going to be controversial to get those eyeballs.
I've got to figure out how, if I'm a news producer or a news executive that has been in charge of, you know, making sure I am maintaining market share, I got to figure out how to penetrate this now broad landscape of information exchange. I've got to get I've got to get the viral thing to show up. I mean, if I'm not getting X number of people watching this broadcast, what winds up happening is that I can't stay in business, because all of a sudden I'm just getting, you know, I'm out in the outer part of the, solar system hanging out with the asteroids, and there's no warmth out here, or no cash either. Right. So I've got to create something that is, that's going to create a controversy and, or create an emotional response, inside the group that I'm with. And I think a little before we got on, you showed me a little clip of And if you'd be willing to set that up a little bit, where was that clip taken again?
So the clip with Jim Acosta from CNN, yeah. So he traveled with the press corps and former President Donald Trump down to the border in, I believe it was Texas, down to the border of Mexico. I think it was in Texas because I think I saw some also footage of Governor Abbott of Texas, him seeing him as well. And the former president was playing his greatest hits, really, and he was continuing to propagate the big lie. Interestingly, the other people that were there, sort of the audience, if you will, for Trump's speech, were not Trump supporters. It was members of Congress, especially the House of Representatives, who are in alignment with him. But, Jim Acosta, when there was a lull toward the end of his speech and what he was saying, he decides to shout a question at the former president and asked, "Are you going to apologize for January 6th?" And to me, it was very disappointing to see him ask that question in that way, but even to ask it at all, because there's no way Trump's going to agree with you on, what his answer is going to be. You're just trying to make the question itself be the news.
No, bad news is still news. See, even it's a little weird to say, but this gives the alternate news media a chance to air that thing. And that creates an us versus them. Who's the them? Well, it gets CNN to be known as, and it becomes continued to be the demonized fake news narrative, instead of going like, if he doesn't yell anything, then it's just Donald Trump standing there and nothing going on except for a couple of word exchanges, and he's saying similar things that he's said in the past. Now, there is a big problem that comes up here, Tom, and the biggest problem actually has to do with the word apology. It doesn't work. Even if it's true, and even if the person is humble, most of the time people don't really go down the path of apology, because their identity or their self-worth or their respect is woven up into the choice that they made. So, I mean, he's not even looking, Acosta isn't even looking for the question to be answered, because if it was, then it would say, hold on one moment. Former President Trump would have said, hold on one moment. In looking back, I feel disappointment that those people acted the way they did, because it took the focus away from the election stuff that I wanted to talk about, because now we're talking about the violence. Trump could have actually spun it in his direction if he had those skills.
Well, yeah, that's a very big if. I mean, I think we know the former president well enough to know that he's not gonna do that. I agree, he could have, and he could have turned it around and made it into a victory for himself.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing that's really missing here, is the power of communication. Is that if you're confronted with a challenging question, it's to step through the challenging question, not to step around it. One of the things that's happened over the last 5 to really kind of 7 years is to do a thing called sidestep the challenging question rather than step through the challenging question. Is what I recommend when I do my mediation practice, when I recommend when I do business consulting, is to step through the conflict. Don't step around it. Bring bad news early. Do scary honesty. Take the heat. Hold the shield up if they're doing a flamethrower, and then have a compassionate and empathetic response to get back. Apologies rob us of that. Apologies always have a power over narrative. Somebody is better than the person that made the mistake. If if one of the things that we need to do as human beings is do a better job regarding accountability, Tom, and you and I know this one right down the thing. It's not just global warming, but it's global pollution to go with the global warming, which is having to do with, well, I can make this plastic thing, but I'm not responsible for nature to reprocess it. It's up to some landfill to do it. It's like, wait. Hold on a second. Hold on a second. That's not the level of balance of nature that we really need to get ourselves into, because then all of a sudden I feel like I'm coming out of a scene of Wall-E, where all the trash is piled up all over the place on the planet, and there's little robots putting the trash into little containers in a stack. Gosh, is that the world that we're heading towards, right? So we want to really do a better job of languaging and being able to give a question to a leader that they can answer and slow walk into accountability. Slow walk it into accountability, which is something that most people are willing to do, just so it's not dangerous.
Or it can help reveal truth of person that you're asking a question of without them realizing that you're kind of walking them out the end of a plank. So
Right.
I agree that, former President Trump could have answered
Yes.
that question in a way that he could have turned it into a win for him, which, boy, wouldn't he love that? I mean, at last I heard, he likes to win.
He likes to win.
But he doesn't think that way. He sort of more feels like, hey, you punch me, I'm going to punch you back. That's sort of his style, right? But let's say you're Jim Acosta in that situation, and let's for a moment, let's change the circumstance a little bit and say, all right, he's not yelling a question in a situation that you're unlikely to get an answer anyway. But let's say he's actually been called upon, and he's going to ask a question, and the former president's paying attention. What would you counsel Jim Acosta to do, or to restructure that question to start to achieve something beyond just getting attention?
Well, the difficulty that's a part of it is that Jim just needs the emotional reaction, because the story was a part around the insurrection, but it was really about the way it was framed inside that video clip. These were all the congressmen that avoided to vote on the thing.
You're right. That's right. We need to make sure that our audience understands that.
There's an alternative motive for Jim doing it. He's trying to shine the light on another truth by creating an inciting incident. And the inciting, it's not flashy enough for the internet, unless you say the crowd boos Jim Acosta. Oh my gosh, that would be the great highlight. What did Jim say? See, now Jim's just doing the same thing as Tucker's doing, and the same thing as
which
Trump does.
I agree. He was manufacturing news, trying to create some new truth. But let's just be clear for our audience so they understand. This speech at the border took place the same day there was a vote in the House of Representatives, the U.S. House of Representatives, specifically for creating a House Select Committee to investigate January 6th. Since the bipartisan effort got killed in the Senate, the House decided they're going to move forward and investigate on their own. So all these Republican members of the House avoided voting on it at all. They didn't vote yes or no because they're at the border with Trump.
They don't have to go on record. They don't have to go record, on one way or another. Yeah, I wasn't there for that vote. Okay.
Yeah, I was dealing with urgent matters at our border, or I was, something.
That's right. The messaging, our words matter. How integrity works matters. We do. Human beings really want trust and integrity and truth telling. We kind of do. But at the same time, a person or a group of people it's too painful for them to listen to the truth because it's against a fundamental belief that they've invested in. People have invested in the former president, money, time, energy, spirit, prayers, all of those things they've invested in the former president. And because they've invested in it, they believe in him. He's able to do it. The messaging is, nobody can fix this but me. Now, it doesn't matter if he actually did or didn't fix things, because the brain just needs to believe 51% of it to be true. It just needs to be over the middle mark before it says, I'm all in. And I know that's unsettling, but it's willing to tolerate, the brain is willing to tolerate 49% of untruth just to create stability for itself. And I'm wincing because that just means that it's easy to sell soap and razors and food and fast food and whatever stimulus that you put in. It just means, we are not fast food, we're fan food. And now all of a sudden I just languaged a marketing slogan for, for one of the fast food restaurants. It's, if
yeah, people love our food. It doesn't matter that they're taking you away from what it is or if it's healthy. It
doesn't matter. We can go down various different marketing and branding messages, and it's just where the vote is. And it's whether it's the vote or the cash, all I got to do is get that brain to be on the 51 percentile side of it and keep reinforcing the 51% that it's true. And then the brain will just naturally move over, and it's really kind of hard to swing back. It's almost like it's the sad story that, and the researchers really documented this pretty good. It's a sad story that at the end of World War II, as the German soldiers came home, there were, many of them believed that Hitler never lied to them. Now you got to sit with that a little bit, because that means there was loyalty, there was respect, and the fight for the motherland, the fight, for the fatherland in this case, and the commitment, to a loyalty and to an identity and to the vision of the leader. Well, it's also to the product. You and I buy things based on how many imprinted messages that we've received, and our brain can't escape it either. So it's really important for us to, as human beings, to start writing our language that has things that can be helpful. So then Jim Acosta would then say, instead of, are you apologizing? No, he can't. Trump will never answer that question. It's going to get Jim the eyeballs he wants, but it's not necessarily going to help the nation. It's like, is this event helping the nation heal? He still gets his headline, because everyone at the gross goal is going to still boo him. But now it's not about an apology. It's about a forward leading message. People will boo him. Is this helping the nation heal? Can you imagine that sentence instead of apologize? Apologize in this case is a past looking narrative. And this is a future looking narrative based on a need that is valuable to the nation. And that helps news, because now the conversation is, yeah, he's not interested in healing in the nation. And also all the congressmen that are here are not interested in healing and truth for the nation either. Rutrow, now all of a sudden, he still has the message, but there are people saying Trump doesn't have to apologize by anything. He didn't really send those people down there. Those are just crazy people. And the people that are saying that are already on the 51% in the believability of it. So this is a very unsettling conversation about how language can be used, and how if we don't do a better job, fake news gets to have more of a lifespan than it already has, which is not really good to have, because then they're just telling a story to get eyeballs. And our nation is not in the willingness to take capitalism away from news.
That's true. The news organizations are independent and they have to make a profit or they're not going to be around. So that is true. And that's
not willing to do that.
Problematic in its own way, but it's the reality of our capitalistic society. That's the way it is.
But there's ways to get there where at least you're closer. There's ways to get there language wise that you're at least you're closer to integrity and truth. And it's not so much Jim's fault as much as an unawareness of the problem in it. The problem in it is that you're trying to create a power over, power under narrative, which is the same thing that the right does, the left does.
Sure. Well, that's what Tucker Carlson does on a daily basis, on his show.
Yeah, he's gonna do that, and it's marketing and branding becomes the primary focus, and all you're doing as news media outlets are testing branding and marketing message to see what'll stick in order to persuade, encourage, capture, enlist loyalty against the other side. And again, that's not a strong, healthy democracy narrative. So if you have an opinion, but then setting an opinion next to an exaggerate and spin, as one Fox person said, oh, he just exaggerates and spins. He doesn't really lie. Well, exaggerates means that you're telling something below the 51%, and you're spinning it to get it to be above the 51%. And that's the way language is being used currently. So we're going to see more blaming, more shaming, more judgments, more criticisms, more labels, more diagnosis. And both as a nation and as a business or a company or as an individual, if we're going to work to reduce the emotional load inside the listener and to have a better discussion of truth, then we can do a better job of getting progress to work on the things we need to work on. We got some big problems.
Yeah, we do have some big problems, and that's sort of was our point from the beginning of this episode, is that do we really need to waste time just getting eyeballs to a story, and instead of trying to actually report some news, find some facts, or ask some questions that can actually be answered that get us closer to truth? I mean, that it's disappointing when that just doesn't happen.
It works. Saturation branding, saturation marketing works. It does. It works. You say it enough and it works. That's why, it's a great deal of Republican voters believe the problems, that there are problems with the election. And they believe it because they keep hearing the same message. They've got them from the 40% part of the brain believing it up over the 51%. And now it's just, once you keep getting them on the other side of the line, then you've got this herd going in the direction that is not inclusive and not collaborative.
Well, and that's the other problem that we've seen Jim Acosta do in other, reporting that he's done, and some of the other. We talked about another CNN reporter, about how they go after the facts, and they try to combat these 51% and more beliefs with the facts, which is never going to work. It's not effective.
Now that, you've got to be compassionate to what the person's response is, not counter it with a counterpoint with a fact. That's not helpful. What's helpful is that the person, is in a group of people and says, well, the voters are in charge. Well, these voters are not really in charge because they're not on the Supreme Court. It's the court has the wisdom and knowledge and experience about the rule of law. Because the voter is not enforcing the rule of law. In fact, if you left it up to them, they would want somebody to enforce the law on others, but not themselves. And that's when a lot of current spin-off problems that we're having right now with the various different laws that are being written in order to support the needs of the few over the needs of the many. And that's not a good thing, because it becomes less and less a stable entity called a nation. And we got to recapture that and do a better job of recapturing that. Because restoring respect and identity and acknowledgement and recognition for what the nation does and can do is, called honoring the win when it takes place. And, we'll have to see how the infrastructure bill will sit, as it moves forward. So that's awesome.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks, Bill. I appreciate having this conversation and shining a little light on what is really some sensational journalism, We're
going to get beyond apologies and get into disappointments and how to transform an apology moment into a moment of healing, progress, and growth. So an apology doesn't really fully get us there. So maybe that's what we pick up with next, is how do we move the needle to get our leaders to language things in a way that it's going to move forward. And then that'll be more helpful.
Okay, Bill. Thanks very much. I look forward to that.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for listening to this Purchasing Truth podcast. We trust that you have enjoyed this engaging and thought-provoking conversation. Our hope is that you've received value, found clarity, and broadened your truth perspective in this episode. If you did, leave us a review or visit our website, purchasingtruth.com. Join us again for another informative and content-rich discussion here at the Purchasing Truth podcast. Don't just accept whatever information comes your way. Join the discussion. Discover your own voice. Purchase your own truth.